So you know that story about the lady who sued McDonald's because her coffee was too hot. Yeah, that one. Everyone thinks she's like this total scammer, right? Well, here is the thing. Almost everything you've heard about this case, it's a lie. The woman's name was Stella. She was 79 years old, and she didn't just get burned, she almost died. And what happened to her after? Honestly, it's one of the most messed up things I've ever researched. So let's talk about it. So today I'm gonna tell you a story that will make you angry, because everything you think you know about it, complete lies. This is about how corporations manipulate stories, how the media twisted the truth, and how one 79-year-old grandma became the most hated woman in America for basically no reason. So grab your coffee, be careful with it, and let's get into this. Alright, so here is the version that most people know. Okay, this old lady is driving around with hot coffee between her legs. She spills it on herself, completely her own fault, gets some minor burns or whatever. And then she sues McDonald's for millions of dollars, ends up rich, and everyone is like, wow, what a con artist. And comedians made jokes about this for years.
Cause I spilled a frappuccino in my lap and it was cold! I'm gonna sue! Yes, I'm gonna sue!
Even presidents and politicians talked about this case as like the perfect example of a frivolous lawsuit.
If a lady goes through a fast food restaurant, puts coffee in her lap, burns her legs, and sues and gets a big settlement, that in and of itself is enough to tell you why we need to have tort reform.
So yeah, for like 30 years, everyone thought Stella was this greedy old lady just trying to get rich off McDonald's. Except none of that actually happened. Like, literally none of it is true. So let me tell you what really happened. Okay, so first of all, Stella Liebeck. She wasn't some scam artist. She was 79 years old and she had just retired after working her entire life. And honestly, she was really active for her age. She drove herself everywhere, lived independently, didn't need help with anything.
My mother at 79 was very active. She drove well. She very seldom dropped anything. She very seldom spilled anything. And so that, for her age, at 79 years old, I thought she was remarkable. And she had been working full-time just about until about a week before this all happened.
So it's February 27th, 1992. Stella and her grandson Chris had just dropped off her son at the airport. It was early morning, they were hungry, so they stopped at McDonald's for breakfast. And this is really important. Stella was not driving. I cannot stress this enough. She was sitting in her passenger seat. Her grandson Chris was driving. So they go through the drive-thru. Chris is driving, Stella orders a coffee, it was like 49 cents. They pull into a parking spot so Stella can add cream and sugar. Now, Chris was driving this 1989 Ford Probe and it didn't have cup holders. So Stella places the coffee cup between her knees to hold it steady while she tries to remove the lid.
Wanted to get the top off to put cream and sugar in, so I put it between my knees to steady it with this hand, trying to get the top off, and it just went, ooh.
The cup tips over, coffee spills everywhere, all over her lap, and she immediately starts screaming. Now, you're probably thinking, okay, it's hot coffee, it hurts, I get it. But guys, this wasn't just a regular hot coffee. McDonald's was serving their coffee at 180 to 190 degrees Fahrenheit. That is almost boiling temperature. Water boils at 212 degrees. So this coffee was insanely close to boiling. For comparison, most coffee makers at home heat coffee to around 140 to 160 degrees. So McDonald's coffee was like 30 degrees hotter than what you're used to. And here is the scary part. At 180 degrees, liquid causes third-degree burns in just 2 to 7 seconds. You literally don't even have time to react. So Stella's wearing sweatpants. The coffee soaks into the fabric and just sticks to her skin. And she can't get away from it fast enough. Her grandson Chris wraps her in a sheet and rushes her to the hospital as fast as he can. And when the doctors see her burns, they are horrified.
Excruciating pain. I was burned so severely that they didn't think I would live.
I'm a nurse, and I was horrified at the type of injuries that she had sustained, the skin grafts and the pieces that were still ongoing. So it was kind of a shocker because it's one thing to hear, but it's another thing to see. So it was kind of oh my goodness.
The coffee burned 16% of her entire body, her inner thighs, genital area, groin, buttocks, and 6% of those burns were third-degree burns. I don't know if you know what a third-degree burn is, but it means the skin is completely destroyed, like gone. You need a surgery, you need skin grafts. That's when doctors take skin from another part of your body and attach it to the burned area. Stella was in the hospital for 8 days straight. She lost 20 pounds, which was literally 20% of her body weight. And the doctors honestly weren't sure if she was going to survive. I'm gonna show you the actual photos of her burns now, and I'm warning you, they are really graphic, so if you don't want to see them, look away for the next 5 seconds. Yeah, so those burns are pretty horrific, right? I mean, would you do that to yourself on purpose for any amount of money? I really don't think so. So Stella gets released from the hospital after 8 days, but she can't take care of herself anymore. Her daughter has to take time off work for like 3 weeks just to care for her mom full time. That's over a month of lost income, about $5,000. Stella's medical bills, even after Medicare kicked in, she still owed $10,500. Plus, she was going to need thousands more for future medical care, and she was disabled for the next 2 years. So here is what Stella did. She didn't immediately call a lawyer. She didn't want to sue. She just wanted McDonald's to pay her medical bills. That's it. Her daughter wrote a letter to McDonald's basically saying, "Hey, can you please pay the $18,000 for medical costs and lost wages? And also, we think that might have been a one-time mistake with your coffee machine, so can you maybe check them?" Now, keep in mind, at this time, McDonald's was making $1.3 million per day just from coffee sales alone. Just coffee. So $18,000 to them that's like nothing. That's like pocket change. So what do you think McDonald's did? Do you think they just paid it and moved on? They offered her $800. $800 for a woman who almost died, who had third-degree burns over 16% of her body, who spent 8 days in the hospital, who was disabled for 2 years. $800. So at this point, Stella's family is like, okay, we have to sue. Like $800? Are you serious right now? But honestly, Stella didn't want to. She had never filed a lawsuit in her entire life. She just went through this traumatic experience. The last thing she wanted was more stress. But she didn't really have a choice. So she hired lawyers. And her lawyers tried to settle this 3 times before even going to trial. They kept trying to avoid court. First, they asked for $90,000 to settle. McDonald's said no. Then they asked for $300,000, still no. Then a mediator, that's like a neutral third party, suggested $225,000 would be fair. McDonald's said no again. So they had to go to trial, and this is where everything comes out. So Stella's lawyers present their case, and they argue that McDonald's was serving coffee at dangerously high temperatures on purpose. It was literally in their franchise rules. Coffee had to be served between 180 and 190 degrees, and McDonald's admitted it in court. They said they did it because people buy coffee on their way to work, and by the time they get there, it's cooled down enough to drink. But here is the thing, they never actually tested this theory. They had no idea how long it actually took for the coffee to cool down to a safe drinking temperature. They just decided 180, 190 degrees sounded good and went with it. But then Stella's lawyers discovered something huge. In the 10 years before Stella got burned, from 1982 to 1992, McDonald's coffee had burned more than 700 people. 700 people in 10 years. That's like almost 2 people every single week for a decade. Adults, children, even babies, all burned by McDonald's coffee.
And if you add up the burn history of McDonald's since January of 1983 until March of 92, it's over 700 burn cases, and that doesn't surprise you, does it?
I can't say that I'm surprised or not surprised. I'm glad the number's not higher.
All right.
I'm really pleased that it's not more than that.
I'm sorry, did he just say he was glad it wasn't more people? Like, what? So McDonald's knew. They knew for 10 years that their coffee was burning people, and they did absolutely nothing about it. They didn't redesign their cups. They didn't get better lids. They didn't lower the temperature. Nothing. They had even paid out like $500,000 in settlements to burn victims before Stella, but they never changed their policy because they were making so much more money on coffee that they just didn't care. Can you imagine that? 700 people, and they just kept serving it the same way. So the jury hears all of this evidence, and honestly, from the interviews I've seen, they were pretty angry at McDonald's.
We talked about different percentages of how much was her fault versus, how much was McDonald's, and we finally came to assign 20% fault to Mrs. Liebeck because she had initially spilled the coffee. And we assigned 80% of the blame to McDonald's because they had a very long history of people being injured, and they were so adamant that it was such a trivial thing that they weren't going to bother to do anything other than just continue to rake in the money on their coffee sales. And the fact that it was their own records really damned McDonald's as far as I was concerned, because it was very obvious that they knew there was a problem and they were ignoring it completely, just totally disregarding the consumer safety.
So the jury decided that yes, technically Stella was 20% at fault because she did spill the coffee, but McDonald's was 80% at fault because they knew people were getting hurt and they chose to do nothing about it. So Stella was awarded 2 things: First, $160,000 for medical bills, pain and suffering, all of that. And second, $2.7 million in damages. Now, I know $2 and $7 million sounds like a lot, but here is the thing. The jury calculated this amount based on McDonald's coffee sales. $2.7 million was equal to 2 days of their coffee revenue, just 2 days.
We looked at the coffee sales on a daily basis, and we figured about 2 days worth of coffee sales. We thought that that was, a fair amount, and punitive damages, we assessed at $2.7 million.
Punitive damages are very rare, and they have a specific purpose, which is to essentially change the behavior of the wrongdoer.
So those damages are basically a punishment. It's the jury saying, okay, McDonald's, you've been ignoring this problem for 10 years. Maybe if we hit you in the wallet, you will actually do something about it. But then the judge reduced those damages to $480,000. And after that, Stella and McDonald's settled out of court for an undisclosed amount that we will never know. But I can tell you one thing, it definitely wasn't the $2.9 million that the media kept reporting. Okay, so you think that would be the end of the story, right? Stella gets some compensation, McDonald's hopefully learns a lesson, everyone moves on. Well, that's not what happened, because what came next is honestly kind of evil. I don't really know how else to describe it. McDonald's and other big corporations used Stella's case to launch one of the biggest propaganda campaigns I've ever seen, and they turned Stella into the villain. Late-night shows made her a punchline. News stations spread complete lies about what happened. They said Stella was driving. She wasn't. Chris was. She had minor burns. No, she almost died. She made millions. She didn't. She was trying to scam McDonald's. She just wanted her medical bills covered.
In Albuquerque, an 81-year-old woman has been awarded $2.9 million after she sued McDonald's, claiming their coffee was too hot. It seems she was holding a cup between her legs while driving.
I spoke to a lawyer. We're suing for millions. Suing? What for? The coffee was too hot.
None of that is true. But the media repeated these lies over and over and over, and people believed them. And here is probably the worst part of all of this. Stella couldn't even defend herself. Part of her settlement agreement was that she wasn't allowed to talk to the media about her case, so she had to just sit there silently while the entire world called her a scam artist, a gold digger, a con artist. She received death threats. People sent her horrible letters. The hate she got was just insane. Can you imagine? You're 79 years old. You just went through this horrific traumatic experience. You almost died. And then the whole world decides you are the bad guy. This sweet elderly woman became the most hated person in America, all because she asked McDonald's to pay her medical bills. So why did all of this happen? Like, why would corporations spend so much time and money attacking this one elderly woman? Because they were using her case to push for something called tort reform, basically laws that make it harder for regular people like you and me to sue big companies. They wanted caps on how much money you could win in a lawsuit. They wanted to make it more expensive and more difficult to hold corporations accountable when they hurt people. And they held up Stella's case as their example. Look at this woman getting millions for spilled coffee. We need to stop this from happening.
No one has ever been healed by a frivolous lawsuit. I urge the Congress to pass medical liability reform.
And it worked. A bunch of states passed tort reform laws, which means if something like this happens to you today, you might not be able to get the compensation you deserve. So what happened to Stella after all of this? The truth is, she never really recovered. The combination of her injuries and the stress from the lawsuit and all the public hatred, she just never was the same person again. Stella Liebeck died on August 5th, 2004. She was 91 years old.
I mean, I've heard so many ridiculous stories about she was asking for $30 million or, something equally ridiculous. Basically, Stella told them, I want you to cover what Medicare doesn't cover, and I want you to get a better lid on that coffee because I don't want this to happen to another person. And that was basically what she was asking for.
When somebody goes to court, they're doing something extraordinary that is hidden. To go to court and to sue is not a simple procedure. You have to go through a lot of trouble to do it. It affects your life. You're going to be attacked in all kinds of ways. Going to court to gain justice is heroic. That idea has to be out there. That is, when you, quote, win a case, you win it for other people, as well as gaining justice for yourself.
Her case is still taught in law schools today. It's still referenced in courtrooms, and I really hope it saved other people from getting burned as badly as she did. Because honestly, that's all she wanted. She just didn't want anyone else to go through what she went through. So I guess the point of all this, the reason I wanted to tell you this story is this. Next time you hear about this lawsuit, I want you to ask yourself, who is telling you it's frivolous? Is it the person who got hurt, or is it the corporation that hurt them? Because I promise you, these companies are counting on you not asking questions. They are counting on you just believing whatever you hear in the news or from comedians. Don't let them. Look deeper, ask questions, because Stella's story, it's not unique. This happens all the time. Oh, and by the way, McDonald's still serves their coffee at 170 to 180 degrees today. That's only about 10 degrees cooler than when Stella was burned. So yeah, be really careful out there. Alright guys, that's the real story of the McDonald's coffee lawsuit. If you learned something new today, or if this completely changed your mind about this case, please give this video a thumbs up. Share this with someone who still thinks Stella was a scammer, because I think people really need to know the truth about what actually happened. And drop a comment below. I want to know, did this make you angry? Because honestly, it should. Subscribe if you want more videos where we look at the real truth behind famous stories that everyone gets wrong. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.